This Day in Sports History. And welcome back to This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Network. You could find more podcasts and more info at sportshistorynetwork.com. It's March 20th, and on this day in 1954, it was the high school basketball game that inspired the movie Hoosiers. It was a 20th century version of David versus Goliath. Tiny Milan, Indiana, a town of about 1,100 people in the 1950s. It didn't even have a stoplight. Its lone high school only had 161 students, 73 of which were boys. 58 of those 73 tried out for the basketball team. By contrast, Muncie Central had more students than Milan had people. They'd won 8 state titles and been to the Final Four 17 times. Their starting front court was 6'5", 6'4", and 6'2". Milan's tallest was Ron Truitt, who played the post at 6 feet 2 inches. Everybody else for the Indians was under 6 feet tall. But here they were, tiny Milan in the Indiana State Championship game in Indianapolis against Muncie Central. Now, they had made the Final Four the previous season, so Milan were not complete unknowns, but they just didn't have the championship pedigree of Muncie. All 15,000 seats were full in Hinkle Fieldhouse, with some paying as much as $50 a seat to scalpers outside to watch it. Those who couldn't make it to the game listened on the radio or watched on television. It's estimated that 90% of the folks in Indiana listened to it on the radio or watched the television broadcast of it. The game itself is known for 2 distinct things. First, with Muncie leading 28-26, Milan went into the stall game. They passed it around the perimeter for about a minute and a half, and then Coach Marvin Wood had Bobby Plump just hold the ball for an excruciating amount of time.
The great story about Milan was when Bobby Plump held the ball for 3.5 minutes, Marvin Wood said he had him hold the ball because he was trying to think of something to do.
After that, the pace picked up a good bit. Milan's Ray Kraft tied the game up with 2.5 to play. Then, after Milan rebounded a missed Muncie shot, Plump made a pair of free throws to give them the lead at 30-28. Milan had a chance to put the game on ice, but a Kraft shot fell off the rim and gave Muncie the chance to tie it. Now tied at 30, Milan called timeout with 25 seconds left. As cool as it would be if they actually drew up the old picket fence play for this one, Coach Wood simply said to get the ball to Bobby, and then he looked Bobby squarely in the eye and said over the screaming din of fans, "Wait until about 5 or 6 seconds on the clock and go for it."
He's dribbling around 10 seconds, 9 seconds, Bobby Plump dribbling 6 seconds.
The only thing that was registering that I can recall was that there was my man in front of me that was guarding me, and I knew that I had to beat him either to drive all the way or stop and shoot the jump shot.
6 seconds, clock going down, jump, shoot from the circle, score! Now 1 second, the game's over.
Bobby Plump hit the game winner with 3 seconds left, and Milan had pulled the upset 32-30. The team made the 86-mile trip back to Milan the next day, and they were met with a parade of police cars and fire trucks once they crossed the county line. The town of 1,100 swelled to 30,000 to welcome the boys home. The celebrations may have eventually calmed down, but the memories never have. A museum was established in town to celebrate the 1954 Milan team, and of course in 1986, the movie Hoosiers, featuring the small-town Hickory High Huskers making it to the final game against the South Bend Central Bears, was inspired by the 1954 Milan win. In the movie, it was Jimmy Chitwood instead of Bobby Plump hitting the game-winning shot. And of course, the role of head coach was played by Gene Hackman, who recently passed away. Now, one interesting thing about the movie, Sheb Wooley played the role of Cletus Summers. Now, if Sheb Wooley's name doesn't really jump out at you, well, he is best known for singing the comedy song The Purple People Eater, and you have undoubtedly heard his scream in a movie at some point in your life. Wooley performed what has become known as the Wilhelm Scream. Hey, real quick, you've heard me talk a lot about the Sterling Soap Company over the past few months, and if you haven't tried out their soaps, I get it. It's not easy changing up your routine. But let me just say, if you give them a try, I'm nearly 100% certain you will have zero regrets. They carry not only bar soap, but shave soap, liquid body soap, body lotions, beard balm, lip balm, and a lot more. Plus, there are myriad scents to choose from. Their products are made with natural ingredients and scented oils, and they are committed to being environmentally conscious. And I always get a handwritten note on my packing slip, so I know it's been checked before shipping, and it's a nice little human touch in a world that seems to be going away from that. Give Sterling Soap a try today at sterlingsoap.com. On this day, 6 years apart, Northern Iowa experienced the highs and the lows of March Madness. Let's start in 2016 with the low for the Panthers. This was a second-round game against Texas A&M. With 45 seconds left, Northern Iowa had a 12-point advantage, and everybody figured that the Aggies were going to be packing their bags for home. But a quick bucket cut the deficit to 10. A steal and another bucket made it an 8-point game. And then, the Panthers panicked a bit on the next inbounds.
No timeouts either side. Jesperson throws it in. Jones dunks it down. And can the Aggies pull off a miracle in Oklahoma City?
Uh-oh. In 23 seconds, the Aggies had scored 6 to cut the lead to 6. The Panthers had more problems getting the ball in bounds, and the Aggies hit a 3 to make it a 3-point game with 19.6 remaining. But they finally calmed down, got the ball in bounds, and they got a dunk on the opposite end. Phew. Back to a 5-point advantage with 18 seconds left. But Texas A&M attacked. A drive to the bucket resulted in an and one to make it a 2-point game. Northern Iowa hit the panic button again.
No timeouts for the Panthers. So Washman throws it into the hands of the Aggies. Gilder lays it in. Tie game 71 with 1.9 seconds left.
And just like that, 14 points in 45 seconds, and the Aggies had tied it up and sent the game to overtime. Each team scored 12 in the first OT to send it to a second. The Aggies eventually wore down the Panthers and took the 92-88 double OT win. It is the largest deficit ever overcome in the final minute of a game that led to a win in NCAA history. Okay, so pick your heads up, Panthers, because it's time to rewind the clock 6 years to what happened on this day in 2010 when Northern Iowa wore the glass slipper against top seed Kansas. This was a second-round matchup between the 9-seed Panthers and the overall number 1 Jayhawks. Northern Iowa was up 8 at the half and played solidly through the second. They did not play a perfect game either, but they came up with key rebounds and buckets at the right time. With 1:12 to play, they were still up 7. But just like 6 years later, they had issues getting the ball in bounds and ended up committing 4 of their 9 turnovers in the game in the final few minutes. And that allowed Kansas to cut the lead to 1 with 43 seconds left. No worries, the Panthers just had to get the ball into the hands of Ali Faroukmanesh.
Before the shot clock runs out. Oh my.
Faroukmanesh at 3.
Good! You can't be serious with that shot.
Collins the other way. Tyrell Reed. Offensive foul.
A little bit later on, Faroukmanesh calmly sank a pair of free throws to put the game away, and Northern Iowa completed the upset with the 69-67 win. On this day in 1934, it was another babe who showed what they could do on the baseball diamond. Babe Didrikson Zaharias was one of the greatest athletes of the 20th century, and without a doubt, the greatest female athlete of the first half of the 20th century. She was an Olympic champion and later a golf champion, but on this day in 1934, Babe Didrikson, she had not met her future husband and wrestler George Zaharias quite yet, was pitching for Connie Mack's Philadelphia Athletics, facing down the Brooklyn Dodgers in a spring training game in Fort Myers, Florida. Didrikson was less than 2 years removed from the Los Angeles Olympics of 1932, where she had won 2 golds and a silver in track and field. But here in '34, the country was mired in the Great Depression, and it was tough for a lot of people to find work and earn a living, even an Olympic champion. She had joined a barnstorming baseball team, and the promoter for that team had arranged for Babe to meet up with pitcher Burley Grimes in Arkansas. After working out a bit and learning how to throw a curveball, Grimes made the comment that if Babe were a guy, she'd be one of the top prospects. That turned into a trip to Fort Myers for a couple of exhibition games pitching against some major league players, with the first game on the 20th. Didrikson suited up for the Athletics. Casey Stengel sent Danny Taylor to the plate first. Taylor was coming off a year where he hit .300. Didrikson had a little trouble finding the plate and walked him. Next up was Johnny Frederick, who she then plunked. A bit of a shaky start in front of an estimated 400 spectators. Stengel then sent Joe Stripp to the plate. Stripp had hit .324 with Cincinnati the previous season. He swung at the first pitch. Second baseman Dib Williams snagged the line drive, whipped to second base to double up Taylor, and then threw over to first baseman Jimmy Fox, who touched the bag before Frederick could get back for the triple play. That was the only inning she pitched, so even though she had trouble finding the plate, it went down in history as a hitless 3-up, 3-down inning. She took the mound 2 days later in another exhibition and showed some improvement with her control and her curveball, but she got roughed up by the Boston Red Sox in her lone inning. Let's keep the spring training vibe going with this story from 1975. On this day, the Texas Rangers, managed by Billy Martin, were playing a spring training game against the New York Yankees in Fort Lauderdale. The leadoff hitter for the Yankees was former Texas Ranger Eliot Maddux, who was not a big fan of Billy Martin. He had been quoted in a newspaper article saying Martin was very untrustworthy and made a habit of lying to players. Martin, not one to let things slide by, instructed his pitcher Jim Bibby to hit Maddux, which he did on the first pitch. That seemed to be it. Message sent. Well, that was until the 7th inning, when Yankee left-hander Mike Wallace threw 2 brushback pitches to Dave Nelson. Nelson charged the mound, and the benches cleared in a rare spring training brawl with Billy Martin at the center of it. Interestingly, Martin's tenure with the Rangers would only last until July, when he was fired. He was soon hired by George Steinbrenner for his first of several stints managing the Yankees. No word on how that first meeting went between Martin and Maddux when they met in the Yankee clubhouse for the first time since the brawl on this day. And in 1976, Boston Celtic John Havlicek became the first player in NBA history to score 1,000 points in 14 consecutive seasons. Havlicek was one of the all-time greats who was well known for his stamina. He was a problem for anybody to guard, and he always seemed to come up with a big play. On this night, he poured in 24 points against Philadelphia in an overtime win. Havlicek would go on to score at least 1,000 points in his next 2 seasons before retiring after the 78 season. His record streak of consecutive 1,000-point seasons did not last long, however. Houston's Elvin Hayes topped it in 1984. Havlicek was one of the 50 greatest NBA players when honored back in 1996 and is still 17th on the all-time NBA scoring list. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. If you enjoy making your own guacamole, be careful. Avocado-related injuries sent an estimated 51,000 people to the emergency room during a 20-year study period between 1998 and 2017. Women between 23 and 39 years of age were most at risk, with the majority of visits to the ER happening on Sundays. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.